You're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim, and these are the headlines on the continent. Mali's president pays tribute to the 13 French soldiers who were killed in a helicopter crash, saying they died for Mali and all Sahel countries, as well as for France. At least 39 people have died as heavy rains batter the capital of DR Congo. Officials have blamed poor infrastructure and land erosion for the floods and landslides. And shaking up South Africa's food scene, one young chef is tickling taste buds by transforming township recipes into haute cuisine. Well, we begin in Mali, where President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta has paid tribute to the 13 French soldiers that died overnight Monday. Keïta said the soldiers had died for Mali and all Sahel countries, as well as for France. France's ongoing military presence in Mali and a new regional force have failed to stop the onslaught of militant attacks in recent months. The deaths follow the killing of some 40 Malian soldiers in an ambush earlier this month. Naomi Lloyd has more.
One of the worst accidents the French military has seen, the biggest single loss of life since the 1980s. 13 soldiers were killed when 2 helicopters collided during an operation against jihadists in Mali. The helicopters were flying very low when they crashed in Mali's Liptako region near Niger. The military said they'd been called in to support French commandos on the ground pursuing extremists. No one on board survived. The mission was complicated by the total darkness of night.
It was a difficult operation. It was a level 5 darkness, the complete dark of night. And we're talking about fighting conditions here. I really am talking about fighting here. It wasn't just an accident or a collision. This occurred during a combat situation with helicopters that are carrying out a reconnaissance mission in difficult conditions.
France first intervened in Mali in 2013 after extremists seized control of major towns and implemented a harsh version of Islamic law. The deaths bring the total of French soldiers killed in the Sahel region since then to 41.
Well, the area between Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger is described as a jihadist sanctuary. It's where 13 soldiers lost their lives, and it's where French and Burkinabe troops have launched a joint ground operation. Their goal is to assert control over an area where no troops had set foot for over a year.
French soldiers sweep the border zone between Mali and Burkina Faso on the trail of jihadists or of any clues that might lead to their capture. For 15 days in November, French troops set out across the lawless region where the borders of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger meet. Head of the operation, Colonel Lemerle, has called the area a jihadist sanctuary.
It's a cross-border region, so you can easily cross from one side to another, and it's a very inaccessible region with cover and a complicated trafficking network. So it's an ideal area to hide and handle a logistics network.
French troops are participating in their first joint ground operation with the armies of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger. Known as Bogu 4, the 1,400-strong military operation is meant to tackle the rise in jihadist attacks in the region over the past few weeks. Northern Burkina Faso has been particularly affected. Not long ago, soldiers couldn't even enter the region.
We intend to really show the population that we are present and that we are ready to help and fight by their side.
It's no easy task. French intelligence intercepted messages from a prominent jihadist and traced his telephone to a location accurate to within 300 meters. Tension rises. The soldiers have orders to fire without warning, but after 5 hours of marching, they reach a village where everyone has already fled.
We regularly receive intelligence, but the difficulty is in reaching the target quickly. We often reach the target and they've had time to escape.
The joint forces face an elusive enemy which melts into the population. The result is that the French army suspects every villager of being a jihadist. The soldiers let nothing go, even if their actions upset the local population. There is a vast gulf between the French army's resources and the resources of the Sahel armies, but close cooperation is still an imperative. Numerous challenges abound, however. The armies of border countries are still working out how to cooperate, a process which is not without friction. On November the 16th, for example, Burkina Faso accused the Malian army of abuse carried out in a village in its territory.
At least 39 people are dead in the DR Congo after days of torrential rain. In the capital Kinshasa, several of the city's 26 districts were flooded. Bridges, roads and hundreds of homes have been washed away. Landslides in the country's east also claimed 7 lives. Nicholas Rushworth has the story.
Dozens of people were killed as torrential rain led to landslides, damaging infrastructure and homes in parts of Kinshasa. The mayor of the district of Lemba said a drainage ditch had given away and a highway had been engulfed.
We have already found 12 people who have died. There are 3 people missing, assumed to have died. So work is ongoing to get them out of the rubble.
Residents here, hit by the disaster, tried to save what they could.
Thankfully for us, we moved what was inside the house. And then later, the house gave in and caused what you are seeing here. We are trying to make sure our belongings are put here and there at our neighbors' homes.
Fatal floods and rains are frequent in Kinshasa. Around 50 people were killed in landslides and floods after houses collapsed last January. Kinshasa is Africa's 3rd largest city. Its population has doubled in a decade. Many live in precarious, unauthorized dwellings.
Well, let's turn now to Kenya, where a task force has suggested a raft of reforms to end the country's cycle of electoral violence. One proposal is the creation of posts for a prime minister and an official opposition leader. It comes after President Uhuru Kenyatta and his former rival-turned-political ally, Raila Odinga, pledged to promote unity. Their long drawn-out election battle in 2017 left more than 90 people dead. The report stated that fears of a new crisis lead to an economic slowdown 2 out of every 5 years. Now, universal medical coverage is the flagship project of the Ivory Coast government's grand social agenda. The coverage aims to improve access to healthcare for low-income Ivorians. But 2 months after the launch, difficulties are starting to emerge. This report from our correspondent Thais Brook and Frank Hersey.
Since the launch of the universal medical coverage, the CMU, there's been a steady flow of people at enrolment centres. This single mother has made a 20-kilometre round trip with her 5 children to register. For a monthly contribution of 1,000 francs CFA, 70% of any fees for medicines and consultations will be covered by the state.
Say if one of my children falls ill, by the time I've done a consultation, blood tests, medication and all that, you're looking at between 30 and 50,000 CFA francs. But with the CMU, it will cost me a lot less.
But the project is experiencing some teething difficulties. The generic medicines covered by the scheme are distributed by the state, but many have yet to be delivered. So those enrolled are having to pay high prices for brand name versions. The authorities acknowledge that the CMU is still far from reaching the whole country, with barely 10% of the population enrolled. And even in the commercial capital, Abidjan, the CMU remains a mystery for many.
No, that means nothing to me. First time I've heard of it.
While others are disappointed that the CMU will only be valid in the country's crowded public hospitals.
This card, it doesn't do anything, not in the private sector. And the university hospitals are rubbish.
The authorities brush aside such criticism, as the CMU was designed primarily for the poorest in society.
Those fortunate enough to have private insurance that allows them to use private clinics will continue to enjoy those benefits. But together we must create what is known as a basis of solidarity that will enable the vast majority of the population to benefit from a minimum of quality health care.
The government will also pay the contributions for 500,000 people considered to be the country's most disadvantaged, so that they too can access affordable medical coverage.
And now this last story is sure to tickle your taste buds. In Johannesburg, one young chef has been redefining South African cuisine. After spending years learning from some of the world's greatest chefs, including French culinary superstar Alain Ducasse, Soweto-born Wandile Mabaso recently returned home to set up his own restaurant. Pierre Delrieux gives us the tour.
He's the Sowetan chef taking the culinary world by storm. Whether it's with coarse flour known as mealie meal or the spicy relish chakalaka, Wandile Mabaso uses South African ingredients and integrates them into French, Thai, Moroccan or Mexican cuisine.
I don't write recipes, I don't cook by recipe. I just get inspiration from nature, things around me, current situations, climate, the weather, you know.
Set in the upmarket Bryanston neighborhood of Johannesburg, Mabaso's recently opened restaurant Le Créatif has become one of the trendiest spots in town. It's also one of the rare black-owned restaurants in the country.
I'm really excited about the fact that this place is black-owned, owned by a young black man. I love the passion, I love the ambition behind this place. I find it extremely inspiring.
An invitation to rediscover and understand South African cuisine, Mabaso's dishes bridge the gap between historically sneered food culture and the modern interpretation of fine dining.
The people in the country would look at a high-end place as a white-owned place, white-dominated place, you know, and then the fact that I'm black already puts a stamp on it saying that, listen, this is accessible, you know. I'm just like, I'm one of you, I'm from the same township as you in Soweto, so you are more than welcome.
Strong of years of experience acquired from working alongside some of the top chefs in the world, Mabaso hopes his cuisine can inspire both his guests and the next generation of chefs as he continues to refine, reinvent, and redefine South African cuisine.
That's it from us here on Eye on Africa. More news coming up. Stay tuned.